guys, this is Tina. Welcome back to my channel. So we're here for another one of our mass making sessions, and I did kind of try and give you a heads up last week. Hopefully I've got the upload order right this time round, but we're going to be working with some fabric today, and we're going to be making some handmade little ruffle pieces. So you're going to need obviously some needle and thread. You're going to need some fabrics, and you're going to need some scissors. I think that's kind of it. Yeah, I think that's it. I can't think of anything else at the moment that you're going to need. So I have brought along just a few fabrics from my little stash of fabrics. They're mainly the beautiful fabrics that Laura has gifted me over the time. There's just one or two that weren't gifted by Laura. In the main, the ones that aren't ironed, I have to be truthful. So yes, the ones that Laura sent me are obviously the really nice ironed pieces. So we're just going to kind of crack on. Now, just a little bit of a kind of word ahead of making these. I have only ever really made the handmade ruffles using this pretty thin cotton type fabric. So if you can kind of see from here, all of these fabrics are the thinnish cotton. You know, they're of varying thicknesses, but none are kind of like, you know, fleecy or really thick. I mean, I've got here, for example, a velvet, you know, upholstery sample piece. I wouldn't personally use something like this because when you're folding over your ruffles, that's going to get pretty bulky pretty quickly. So, you know, that's just a bit of what I have found over time is stick to quite thinnish cottons. So, you know, for example, if you've got like old tops, you know, a blouse or something, you know, maybe like a flimsy sort of summer cotton skirt or dress, something like that, perfect. Or of course, like the little cotton fat quarters and things like that that you can buy. So if I move these out of the way, and we will just get diving in straight away to what we're going to do. Obviously these are mainly green, which I love green, so I will start with the green one, but I will try and do some of varying colours so it's not quite so boring if you're watching the screen. So all I'm going to do is take, for instance, this piece here. Now, as you know, I do not measure anything, so I can't give you, you know, measurements of how, you know, big my piece of fabric is. All I can say is it's not that big. I tend to make my little handmade ruffles to be about this length when they're kind of finished. So I would say even this is probably a little bit on the long side. So, you know, play around, find what works for you, but bear in mind that, you know, you're probably not going to want it too long, if that, you know, makes sense. So what I might do is cut this down this way rather than across, and the reason for that is so that then, sorry, let me move my needle and thread, which I'd threaded, you know, previously, so that I at least had done it once without you having to all watch me trying to thread the needle. Yeah, the reason I'm going to do that is so that I actually leave the length of the fabric for if then at another time I want to make some actual machine stitched ruffles, I've got the longest parts of the fabric left. Now, when I do my handmade ruffles rather than my fabric, you know, machine stitched, I like to cut them really. Now the reason for that, whereas like my machine stitched ones, I often obviously tear the fabric, I find again when they're just these tiny pieces, if you've got like all those threads hanging off, and this is just, you know, this is just personal preference, of course, you know, that I'm not saying this is the way that you must do it. I just find if I tear it and I've got all the threads, which I absolutely love, for instance here on my big machine stitched ruffle, if your fabric is only this kind of width in the first place, there's not much room for neat fabric in amongst the rough threads, if that makes sense. So that's why personally for the machine stitched ones, I just prefer to hand cut them, but that's just, you know, a personal preference, however you want to do it. Now this, again, I don't have a tape measure, I don't know how long that is, but let's call it, you know, about 12 inches, so roughly a ruler. I personally find that a bit long, so I'm just going to literally trim that roughly in half. Now, as you can see, I made a horrendous job of cutting it. Actually, that piece isn't too bad, but this piece I really made a very diabolical job of cutting it. It's very wonky, but that's fine, because once you stitch it, you can obviously trim it up at the end. So all we're going to do is take one of those pieces, you're going to fold it over like that. Now, hopefully you can see that. And then my thread is already, you know, threaded onto the needle with a knot. I'm going to go through there in the middle of what will be the ruffle at the back folded edge, if that makes sense. So my flap, i.e. what's going to be like effectively like my tail of my ruffle, I'm stitching towards that. I hope that makes sense. I don't really know how to describe it other than that. So I hope that you can see okay, and I hope what, you know, my description's making sense. So that's my first little fold, just like that. I'm going to fold my next one exactly the same. So again, I'm just going to stitch through towards the back of that fold like that. Oops, come all the way through. Oh, try not to obviously get your fabric caught up in it. And then I go just straight down at the very edge of the fold. So it's, you know, it's grabbing that and holding that closed. And again, and then that's it. You're just going to work your way down the fabric, doing exactly that. Now, I am no seamstress. I've said that tons of times. You know, if you watch my channel, you'll know that I've said that a lot of times. I'm not a neat person. I can't do precision type work and things like that. So I really don't mind, you know, if my stitches aren't lined up in the center, that's fine. Nobody's going to be looking closely at your work thinking, oh, she's, you know, she's off with her stitches there. So don't get too hung up on if you are aligning your stitches up or getting them all centered. It doesn't matter. You know, it really doesn't matter. Just do exactly, you know, how you want to do it. So long as it sort of resembles some sort of cute ruffle in the end, that's, you know, that's good enough. So just go down there, and then I will probably get one more fold out of this one. So I'll just go over there. And then probably just one last fold. Now at this point, you know, if you're quite, I was going to say keen on ironing, but no, I'm joking. But you might want to like iron that down to squash it, to help to flatten it. Personally, I don't bother with that either, because when I attach these to my journal, I mean, invariably I will either use my hot glue or maybe my 3-in-1 or, you know, Fabri-Tac or something like that. And then that's going to squash that down and keep that flat anyway. So there's absolutely, as far as I can see, you know, there's no reason to need to iron that. Unless your fabric is very, what's the word? Like, it, you know, if it ends up very puffy, you know, you may need to iron it. Personally, that's not ended up puffy for me. Can you see kind of the edge? That to me looks not puffy. It's going to lay quite flat onto the page. And I would just literally run the glue straight down kind of the center where that stitching is, and then just glue it onto the page like that. And when you're gluing it, obviously you can then, you know, you can curve it round and make it look pretty. So that's all there is to that. So we'll do another one. So I'll just talk you through a couple, and then I will obviously be quiet about the process that we're doing. And I won't be quiet, obviously, I'd just be chatting, but you know, I won't be chatting about what we're doing, because how many times do we need to be chatting about the same old thing, I guess, really? So, oh gosh. I mean, even my knots, I've tried to knot that in the same place, and I've knotted it 3 times now in different places each time. And, you know, probably I have loads of people really kindly try and give me tips for getting it in the same place. I just think it's not in my capabilities to do that. So, you know, I do appreciate everyone's kind advice, but sometimes, you know, you just have to kind of go with your methods, don't you? Right, so again, I've just taken this strip, I'm going from the squared off end rather than this kind of like triangular slither that's a bit like a sort of snake's tail. Of course you could go from that end if you have an end that looks like that. And again, just going to go through my fold at the back, or nearly the back, and then taking my needle, I'm putting my needle after the fold towards what I would call like the end of my ruffle. And then again, exactly the same method. You're just going to be folding that. Oops. I mean, again, horrible hand stitching methods here. So yeah, I mean, you guys are probably much better at your hand stitching than I am, but you know, I mean, to be honest, it really doesn't matter. As long as you come up with the, you know, your desired product in the end, it doesn't really matter how you get there, you know, as long as you don't hurt yourself or anything. And, you know, so long as kind of you manage to do something that you are pleased with, then that's good enough, isn't it? So my thread's obviously getting a little bit twisted up, which I don't think is really helping, but anyway, that's because I obviously used such a long length so that I wasn't forever having to be re-threading my needle. I will have to obviously re-thread it many times, I'm sure, but so we just go over again like that, back through. And I mean, you can really liven these up, you know, when you come to stick these into your journal, you can like, you know, put bling on them, you could put buttons on them, you could put flowers coming out from them, you could put flowers on them. You really can sort of dress them up and make them look, you know, quite fun. For some reason, and I know that I have said this before, I always do these fabric ruffles in the bright colours, in the lovely fabrics. I don't tend to use these hand stitch ones in my vintage type style journals. I tend to use them more like in my fun colourful journals, maybe using like the kids book images and things. I have no idea why that is, but maybe I think they lend themselves, or I don't know. But you see there, I mean, you could have like a flower poking out from behind that ruffle. Really cute and just so easy. You could have a flower, you know, just on top of your ruffle, like at one of the ends. You could have a bit of pearly trim, or, you know, other trim going down your ruffles. So you really can sort of play around with them and make them your own, or obviously you could just leave them plain, which I think looks, you know, just as good. I don't think they really need anything, but I just wanted to give you some ideas if you wanted to. So I'll just knot my thread again, and we'll just cut another strip of the fabric. Okay. Yay! I actually managed to get that on top of the knot. Right, so I'm going to take this fabric here, and again, just going to cut a couple of strips. Now again, I mean, for me, this is probably actually even a bit too long at this side, but that's fine. So I'll cut a couple of strips there. And then, you know, once I stop talking about what we're doing in a minute, it probably is much quicker to actually just cut a whole bunch of strips and then stitch them all, rather than doing this cut, stitch, cut, stitch, cut, stitch, if that makes sense. So again, take my thread and then get my fabric, and we're just going to start stitching that over. That's the first one, the second one. Well, it's really windy today. You can probably hear that wind, but it's very, very windy. It's a really nice bright day so far, but very, very, very windy. Okay. That's it, and just stitch that down. And some of these fabrics just seem to work better. I mean, this one seems particularly easy to use compared to that other one. So whether this is slightly thicker, but it seems to be, I don't know, folding better or sticking down better. But somehow, you know, we raced through that whole fabric ruffle very, very quickly compared to the other two, I think. So, you know, different fabrics are going to be speedier to do than others, if that makes sense. So, you know, just because one fabric's a little bit flimsy and kind of keeps folding in on itself and things like that, another one might be completely different and you'll get through them in no time at all. So there we go, another one done like that. So it's time now that I have to rethread my needle, unfortunately, so that's going to obviously be a protracted process. I have used a needle here with a very big eye, so hopefully I'm going to be able to thread it reasonably quickly on camera. Yeah, because I thought the last thing you want to do is all be watching me fiddle around for ages trying to actually find the eye of the needle. Oh dear. I mean, sometimes I just, those sewing machine needles, they're such thin eyes that I'm literally sat there for like, you know, 10 minutes trying my best to thread the needle, and in the end I just have to give up and ask the kids to do it, you know. And they're all like, oh mum, you're getting so old, you obviously can't do it. And I'm like, well, it's just the lighting's really poor, you know, making excuses obviously. Don't get me wrong, often it is because the lighting's poor, but those needles, they've got the tiniest holes, haven't they? And obviously I have got some of those, you know, like the needle threader things. So I mean, obviously, you know, I do often use those, but I mean, sometimes that's dropped off of my sewing machine and then I can't seem to find one anywhere. And yeah, then I just can't thread the needle at all. So I'm then reliant upon asking the children to do it for me. So, bit of a nightmare. And I know that several people have asked, can I do a video on my fabric ruffles? And I have mentioned this before, but I'm just going to kind of say again, I can't really do a video on the fabric ruffles. I mean, I have done a fabric stitching video, I think, with my sewing machine, making the fabric pillows, whereby I put my machine in the kitchen and was able to film it like that. So, you know, it's not necessarily because, you know, clearly I can't get my sewing machine here on my desk, but it's more that my method is just so appalling. I wouldn't really recommend it to people to stitch their ruffles because, I mean, I have said this before, I've actually stitched through my thumb before. So my method is clearly not the one that you want to follow for making your ruffles. Lots of people have got fantastic tutorials for stitching ruffles. I know that Gail Agostinelli has done one. I think maybe Diane H, I think maybe has done one before. I think Gina from Firefly Studio, I feel like she's done one before. So, you know, there are lots of tutorials out there, you know, for stitching ruffles, and their methods are far superior to mine. Weirdly, I have tried using their methods and actually can't seem to do it, but that's just me, I'm sure. So I'm just checking that I'm in frame, and I think we're coming up to like 19 minutes. Okay, that's fine. Right, let me fiddle around on my chair, get comfy. Okay. Yeah, so I just wouldn't recommend my shoddy method. So, you know, have a look out there, and there will be somebody doing, you know, will have done a tutorial that will be very quick and easy to follow, you know, and produce nice results, hopefully at no safety to your fingers, you know, where mine would just be horribly bodged and possibly would result in injury. So yeah, so I just want to put that out there, just, you know, because I know that a few people have asked me whether I could do a tutorial on fabric ruffles, and honestly, I just am not the best person to do that. So, you know, I mean, even this, to be honest, it's a bit hit and miss, because, you know, my hand stitching is like no great shakes, obviously, either. But I mean, hopefully, at least it's kind of safe enough. So, but my machine stitching, that's just, yeah, not great at all. And also, I do have to get my head pretty close. So, you know, by the time that I actually did that, you probably wouldn't really be able to see anything, to be honest. So, yeah, I'm just not the person to follow for a tutorial for that. So, I wanted to just kind of put that out there. You know, if I felt that I could do it justice and I could do a decent enough tutorial, then I would do it. But honestly, it would just be absolutely dreadful. So, yeah, so that's that. I mean, with the fabric ruffles, again, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, obviously not if you haven't ever done fabric ruffles, but if, you know, if you have made the fabric ruffles like on the sewing machine, I mean, I do tend to kind of do like maybe a whole bunch in like one sitting. So I'll sit there for like a couple of hours and do, you know, a whole load of them. I mean, again, I'm not the best stitcher, so I'm probably not the fastest person on my machine. But yeah, I do tend to try and do them like in one sitting, so that I have like a whole jar full to keep me going for a while. I mean, the only thing is with that is invariably then you don't have the colour that you would like, so it's not quite, you know, quite as handy as it sounds. But I think these mass making workshops, I mean, I must say it has changed the way my whole mind thinks about making things. And I honestly have kind of begun to almost object to just making one thing. I'm like, oh, I don't want to just make one of those. You know, what's the point in just making one? So I'm like a convert now to the dark side. I've converted over to mass making all the way now, which is weird because I was a complete anti mass maker. You know, I couldn't think of anything more boring than mass making, you know, one thing, like making the same of one thing. But I must admit, the convenience of having a bulk of one thing made is pretty awesome and yeah, pretty handy. And actually it does kind of make sense to, you know, whilst you're making one of something, to make a few. So I am now actually converted, I think, to mass making, which I never thought I would hear those words, but definitely, definitely for me, I can see why it makes sense now. I mean, probably I was like the last to catch on to that. You know, probably everyone else was already doing that. There we go. Okie dokie. So I don't know when this video is going to be uploaded, actually, whether it's going to be uploaded before Christmas. I'm not sure of my upload schedule, and I'm not sure how many weeks there are now between now and Christmas. I don't even know which day of the week Christmas is. And in case you've watched last week's and think, well, she said that last week and she's still not looked, it's because I've actually filmed these the same day. So although they're going out a week apart for you guys, for me, these are being filmed on the same day. So it's not that I've just still not looked up what day Christmas is, even though a whole week's gone by. It's just that I'm doing the video on the same day. So I haven't actually stopped and, you know, had a look to see when Christmas is. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. But if this is going out either after Christmas or before Christmas, or, you know, whenever it's, whoa, dropped my thread now, whenever it is going out, you know, yeah, I don't know about you guys, but been obviously, you know, saying to the children, you know, what would they like from Santa? Obviously my eldest son, he was very generous and said, oh, Santa doesn't need to bring me anything because I'm working now. I did say, well, I don't think Santa would, you know, disclude you. You're still one of the children. So we talked about it. And, you know, my daughter and my other son didn't really know what to ask for either. My daughter, who's 5, she wanted a moving unicorn. She hadn't seen one or anything, but, oops, must have not done a big enough knots. I don't know whether she'd seen one or anything. Certainly we hadn't been out and her see one, so I don't know whether she'd seen it on telly or something. But she said she wanted a moving unicorn, and then she changed her mind and she'd seen a teddy bear bag. So she said she wanted a teddy bear bag. And bless her, she's a really good girl. She doesn't really ask for, you know, I want. She's not one of them, which is wonderful, you know. Oh gosh, that must still not be a very big knot. Right. No. Right, sorry about this. Yeah, she's not one of those who's kind of constantly, I want. So that's really great, you know. So that was kind of all she was asking for. So in the end, we all kind of sat down and were talking. And then we came up with, we would ask Santa for a family present instead of, you know, a whole bunch of stuff that nobody really wants or needs. Because I just think everyone's kind of got things now. You know, I mean, the boys, obviously, they've just got their phones and that's kind of like all that they need. And my daughter, really, she just loves crafting and she loves... you know, anything glittery or furry, or so she's got like, I mean, tiny things, you know, that she just likes to put in her bag and kind of carry around with her and get out and, you know, have a play with and put them back. They're not toys as such. They're not kind of like dolls and a pram. I mean, she has got a doll and she has got a pram, but she very rarely kind of pushes that anywhere or does anything. She likes all her bits and bobs, really. So, yeah, we all agreed that we would ask Santa for a family present. So we obviously started researching on the internet what we would actually ask Santa for. And eventually we came up with a stay in a treehouse. So I assume that these are kind of like pretty much everywhere. You know, yeah, I don't know. So we were looking to see tree houses, obviously, here in the UK, and we stumbled across there's some tree houses in Snowdonia in Wales. We have been to Snowdonia, but only once. We didn't walk Snowdonia or climb Snowdonia, but very beautiful, very rugged landscape over there. So yeah, we managed to find this tree house on like Virgin Gift Experiences. And we thought we're going to ask Santa for that for Christmas. I don't think there's like that much availability, if you see what I mean. And clearly I did say, well, we don't want to stay there when it's freezing. You know, I mean, there is a log burner inside the treehouse, but equally it still would be pretty cold, I would imagine. So I think we're going to ask Santa if he could try and arrange it for like about March or April time. And we'll see if Santa manages to bring that for all of us. So we're going to write a family letter. And obviously, if this goes up after Christmas, we'll know whether Santa has actually delivered and bought us that or not. But we're going to write a family letter, obviously, asking for the treehouse holiday. It's the ones that we're going to ask for. It's just like a 3-night stay in Snowdonia in a treehouse. So, I mean, it sounds really cool and really fun. So that's what we're going to ask for as a family present. And then the boys, they may be lucky enough to get a few things from Santa. Things like, you know, some of those we have over here called links. I don't know, again, whether that's available everywhere, but it's kind of like, you know, deodorant-y body spray type stuff. You get things like that over here, like with shower gels and stuff. You know, they do like the Christmas sets. So they might get a couple of things like that. Maybe, I don't know what else. Maybe some pants and socks. You know, just a few little stocking fillery type things. I don't think they're going to ask for anything else, but I'm sure Santa will be nice and bring some little bits so they've actually got some things to open, as well as the treehouse holiday, if they're lucky enough to get that. And then my daughter, again, I think, you know, or well, not I think, she said she's going to ask for, obviously, you know, on the letter, the family treehouse holiday. Oops. And she's going to ask for the teddy bear bag. And I'm sure that Santa is going to be probably quite kind to her, because she's only 5. You know, I'm sure that he'll realise that she would like a few more goodies to open. So I'm sure that he'll end up bringing her probably things that are furry and glittery and craft orientated, maybe kind of some of those little kids makeup sets and things, because she's quite drawn to all those types of stuff as well. Yeah, so I'm sure that he will bring her some little things that she would like, as well as having the treehouse present. So yeah, hopefully they will kind of do well, and everyone will have just what they would all like for Christmas. So that's our plans of our presents that we're all hoping to get. So that's my husband and I as well. That's what we're, you know, also hoping for, is the family treehouse holiday. So yeah, quite looking forward to that. I think the world's evolved a little bit in that kind of stuff now. You know, in that, I'm just going to trim this one down, and actually I don't think I've trimmed any, so I'm just going to show you, you know, you could trim this round now in like a curve. You know, when you come to use it, you can trim it to fit where you're sticking that. So just a little tip there for when you come to use them, that you can just trim around them and make them the shape that you'd like them to be. I probably should actually thread a bit more cotton actually before I stitch my next one, but just thread some more. Okay. Yeah, I think the world's evolved a bit, because I think we all probably went through a period for, you know, several years, a few years back, where things were so cheap and we all overbought and, you know, bought far too much of everything. Oh gosh, got like the world's biggest eye, and I still can't now see to thread it. Okay, right. Yeah, I think kind of went through like this phase of just overbuying. You know, and people's houses are probably bursting at the seams. I mean, certainly I know that mine is, and, you know, I'm pretty sure that several people I know, they certainly have said that their houses are bursting at the seams. You know, with just unnecessary rubbish that we've all accumulated over the years. So I think, you know, a lot of people, and this is a bit of a generalisation, I realise, but I think a lot of people actually prefer having like experiences now and quality time, rather than more rubbish filling up their houses. And also I think things have changed quite a bit, because I think, you know, people don't necessarily need DVDs now, because you've got, you know, like Amazon Prime, and you've got Netflix and all of those kinds of things. So, you know, you've pretty much got stuff to watch all the time without having to buy DVDs, which were always obviously quite a good gift option, weren't they? People don't necessarily need to buy CDs and stuff now, because again, you've got like Amazon Music and, I don't know, Spotify, those kinds of things. So that's another sort of, you know, sort of present option that's, you know, no longer required, I suppose would be the word. What else don't you kind of need? Well, things like, I suppose, you know, what would have been a main present maybe when we were children would have been like a tape recorder, or a record player, or, you know, something like that. Or maybe like, as we got a bit older, maybe a CD player or something, you know, to play your CDs. I mean, of course, they don't need any of that now, because everything's just literally through their phone. So they don't need the devices, they don't need the music, they don't need the actual thing that you play on the devices, you know. So the world's really changed, and I mean, you know, that's fantastic, isn't it? But I just think it means that, you know, there's less stuff to have the need to buy, so that's fantastic. And actually, you know, it's so much nicer to actually have an experience, a memory, you know, something really nice to kind of take with you for your whole life, instead of just this thing, you know, this object that, you know, you might have for like 5 years and then it's broken or out of date, or, you know, you don't need it anymore. Whereas hopefully, you know, we're going to have a wonderful time in that treehouse, and even if it's freezing, or, you know, it might be snowing, it might be raining, it might be whatever, but we will look back on that and we will laugh about it, we'll talk about it, you know, we'll have fun about that generally, you know, hopefully forever, you know, which is so much better, you know, I think anyway. So yeah, I'm pleased that everyone sort of said, oh yeah, let's, you know, let's have a family Christmas present. And we did kind of brainstorm a little bit what would be a good family present. So there were things like, you know, should we go to an opera or something like that, because none of us have ever been to an opera. But I mean, obviously the tickets are extortionate for that, you know, which probably, the tickets would probably have been about the same as the 3-night stay in the treehouse. But obviously our daughter wouldn't have been able to come because, you know, she's 5. I'm sure she doesn't want to go to an opera. And that's fine, because Santa, I think, is bringing her other things anyway. So it's not like she's only having the family present. But, you know, that's not very nice to have a family present where she's not part of it, is it? So then we talked about things like a zip wire. Would we like to do, you know, like a zip wire? Obviously you don't go down as a family, but, you know, we could all do it on the same day. Again, she would be kind of discluded from that. Of course, she could come to the day, she could come and watch, but, you know, she wouldn't actually get to do it. So yeah, we, you know, we looked for several nights kind of trying to figure out what would be the nicest actual family thing that we would all enjoy, all be able to, you know, really participate in, and you know, not obviously too expensive, but something that, I'm not saying it was on your bucket list, but, you know, kind of, I don't know, something that you've not really done before, or possibly not likely to ever do again. So that was what we came up with, and yeah, sounds really great fun. So hopefully we're going to have a really good time. Well, that's if Santa brings it. So fingers crossed Santa is going to be able to deliver on that present. And when we were at my mum's, and I said to my daughter, oh, tell Nanny, you know, what are we asking for our family present? So she said, you know, a family holiday, treehouse. And we were saying about it and said, oh, how's he going to deliver that? And she said, well, he won't be bringing that. He will just be bringing the tickets, which I thought was was really sweet. He won't be bringing that. He would just be bringing the tickets for it, she said. So yeah, let's hope that he gets nice tickets for that type of thing too, because I'm sure that will be all part of the fun in the opening, is rather than some printout, you know, from something being booked. So I'm sure he's busy racking his brains at the moment of what those tickets are going to be looking like. I don't know what's going on with my thread. Have I had to change that now between literally one ruffle and the next? Oh, no, have I just knotted that? Have I knotted that, or did that get knotted? I don't know. Oh well, let's start that again. I've just obviously been rambling on about the treehouse, and now obviously completely lost track of what I was actually doing. This is obviously quite time consuming for me. I mean, this is the type of thing that I would normally do sat in front of the TV in the evening. Obviously not the machine stitched ruffles, because no one wants to listen to my sewing machine. But these hand stitched ones, that's the type of thing that I think is quite a good TV project. I mean, as you can see, I'm very slow at making these. I'm not a very quick sewer. Yeah, I'm sure that lots of you are probably much quicker than me. So you probably, you know, getting through tons while I'm just getting through barely any. I'm just going to cut this down because it's got a sort of folded over bit on the edge, so just make that thinner and easier to stitch. There we go. I'm just going to check them in frame and filming because I haven't checked that for some while now. Hold on. Okay, wow, we're up to 40 minutes. I hope that I've been vaguely in frame somewhere. Okay. Yeah, so anyway, I don't know, as I say, when this video will go up. So it might be that Christmas has already been, or it might be that it's yet to come, but that's what we're hoping for. Okie dokie. There we go. Oops. And then my son, his birthday is in December. It's New Year's Eve. So he will be 17. So he will then be learning to drive, which, as a mum, it's just nerve-wracking, isn't it, to think that your child's going to be out there on the roads, you know, not because you don't trust your child, but there's just such a lot of awful drivers and things. And you know, of course, when you're young, there is this silly tendency to sometimes get carried away, show off, think you're more capable than you are, you know. So yeah, mixed feelings. I mean, on the one hand, I'm looking forward to it, you know, when I'm cooking dinner and I think if he's home from work already and my husband's not, and I find I've run out of something that I need for cooking the dinner, that's going to be fantastic, that I'll be able to ask him to nip to the shop and pick something up for me. But yeah, hopefully he's not going to be thinking he's, you know, Sterling Moss or anything like that. So, scary, scary, scary. Right, okay. Okay, so that's that one. Now this one, as you can see, this one is wanting to be a bit more puffy. So this is where one, you know, it could do with possibly being ironed to squash that. I won't iron that, but you could do. I won't, because I think once you glue that and press it onto the page, that's just going to flatten that enough. But, you know, if you were worried, you could always kind of iron that, and then that would just, you know, solve that problem of anything a little bit puffy. So there we go. Okay. So I mean, I'm even slow at knotting the thread, you see, because for me this is one of those very fiddly things. You know, I know that I'm forever talking about, you know, what I find fiddly and what I don't, but I mean, this for me, this is something that is quite a fiddly task. I mean, I quite like doing them. I think they're quite fun to make, but they're certainly not something that I'm very quick at or good at. But, you know, they're great to have in your stash and have some ready to use. There we go. Oh, I just want to say, I was so thrilled the other day because I was watching a flip through from Sagita's Coffee Stains, and oh, it was a lovely journal. I mean, I love her work, always have loved her work. And would you believe she mentioned me? And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I did thank her on the video. I just couldn't believe that she'd even heard of me, let alone has watched any of my videos. And she said the most lovely things. So thank you so much, Sagita, if you happen to stumble across this video and watch it. I was so thrilled because I have loved her work for the longest time. I know that I've mentioned her before in the past, and she really does just have the most incredible way of, wow, I mean, just putting things together in a way that I could not even begin to sort of comprehend how she does it. I mean, she always kind of calls things grungy and things like that, and I mean, they are kind of grungy, but she just makes things look so incredible. And yeah, just a really phenomenal artist. So wow, I just couldn't believe that she had even heard of me. So you know, literally it was like made my day. So thank you so much, Sagita. If you are watching this and you hear me say that, you literally made my day. Oh, and just one other thing, and I know that I've said this loads of times to people. If I say, like in a, you know, replying to comment that, you know, you're my highlight of the day, I genuinely mean that, because I know that I've talked about it before, but we genuinely, when we're at dinner, we sit and we all say what our highlight of the day was. So, you know, if I say, oh, your comment's going to be my highlight of the day, I really mean that, you know, when we sit down to dinner that night, that will be what I say was my highlight, was reading your comment. So, yeah, in case that kind of comes across weird, you know, when you type things and you think, does that just come across really strange that I've just said, oh, your comment's going to be my highlight of the day? You know, people might read that and think, what's she talking about, you know? Well, I just want you to know that I genuinely, I'm meaning your comment literally, when we talk about it later, is going to be the thing that I say has been my highlight of the day. So, yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, because sometimes when you type things, you know, you just wonder how clear that comes across to the other person, the person reading it, whether they get what you mean at all. So, yeah, I just thought I would mention that quickly. Okay. Right, last one. I have got this red one, but I'm just going to do this as my last one, I think. So this is another one of those from that same fabric where I said it was a bit puffy. So this one may be a little bit puffy as well, but hopefully it will be okay. And I'm just saying this is my last one because my thread's beginning to run out on my needle. So rather than have to re-thread the needle again, we're probably kind of nearing the end of the video. Let me see. Maybe we're not as bad as I thought, actually. Well, 47 minutes it was, so we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Okay, so we probably won't do a fabric item next week. Trying to think what item I'm going to do next week, but yeah, probably not fabric. But you know, it's quite nice to be mixing the fabric items in to the mass making every now and then. So yeah, I'll have to give it some thought what I'm going to do for next week's mass making. I think I said before, but I'm trying to film these ahead so I've got a whole bunch done for over like the festive season, just in case I don't really get much time. So there we go. Okay. Right, cut that down. Ooh. I'll just trim that down because it was quite wide, so going to trim it down slightly like that, and then a bit from this edge as well. Okay, so that looks really nice, doesn't it? Let me check the time and just see now. I can't really see. I think it's 49 minutes, so I've probably got time to just do that red one as well, and then we've done all of the strips of fabric that I'd cut. So then we'll have a count up. It will be interesting to see how many I've done, because I think normally we average about 14 items for our mass makes, and these I feel like have been quite time consuming, so it will be interesting to see how many we've made. They might not have been that time consuming. Maybe I've made 14 of these, I don't know. Might just be because these are a little bit out of my comfort zone. All I'm doing is knotting the thread. Sorry, I realise I'm completely off screen there, but I was only knotting my thread, so I just cut that down. Yeah, these are sort of out of my comfort zone, so it might just be that's what's making me feel like these have been time consuming, because they haven't been just playing around with paper and glue. Because even when we made the fabric paper clips, we weren't actually stitching, were we? We were still gluing. So I was still vaguely in my comfort zone, even though it was fabric. It wasn't actually stitching. So, you know, the stitching for me, that's, yeah, not my greatest talent, I have to say. Well, as you can see. So there we go. Stitch along that. Oops, come on. Oh, this is so annoying. My thread is kind of doing that baggy thing, you know, where you get loops. Again, there's probably techniques that can stop that happening, but, you know, I don't know what they are. Just pull that thread a little bit tighter. Okay. And now that one. Oh, come on. Come on, thread. Bit more and then we'll be done. Sorry, I realised very silent there, which that was weird, wasn't it? Not very often that I'm silent, but there we go. So I will just knock that off, and then this has got that massive, great big, like wide tail, as I would call it. Kind of looks like a fish flapping around on there. I don't know why, but I don't know. Sometimes things just resemble stuff, don't they? So to me, that's what that looks like. It's just got that great big flapping piece at the end. So I will trim that down and neaten that up. So just tie that off there. Okay, cut that down. Ooh, leave that down. Right, cut that like that, and then cut that around. Okie dokie. Right, okay. Okay, so that's those bits. Now put all my little scraps into the carrier bag beside me, my rubbish bin. It's a rubbish bag, but how many did we make? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So actually not too bad. Wasn't too far out of what we normally achieve. So yeah, we made 13. So again, I hope that gave you some ideas of some little, you know, fabric embellishments and pieces that you can use in your journals. I will try and link kind of at the end of this video some of those hyperlink things, you know, on the screen, so that you can click and see a couple of my journals where I have used these, and then that will hopefully give you some ideas as to how these can be used. So thank you so much for joining me, and hopefully see you again soon. Thanks then. Bye.